Hi everyone, this is John. I haven't made a video in a long time, so give me some slack because I may stumble a bit. But I was going to the gym this morning and I saw this just outside. I mean, just laying there on my way to the gym, just right out there by the parking lot. And frankly, I was just shocked. I have no idea the situation in which something like this would just be out in public, laying there, and it's open. It's just I felt compelled to do a video and to maybe point to some things that you, if you're watching this, to just do a little research on. And I think you'll see that we're, if not at the end times, very close. Uh, I'm sure a lot of you heard about the blood moons and how they are interpreted in the Bible, that the moons will be turned to blood before the coming of the Lord. And the blood moons in particular are always, especially the four blood moons, the tetrads, are always linked to these historical events that have to do with Israel and the Jewish people. And of course, we know something is pointing to that this time. We have the last blood moon coming up in September. And we know with Iran and the nuclear deal and everything that's going around uh, with that, that something big could definitely look like it's happening. Big things have already happened. I mean, we can always point to the nuclear deal itself could be pointed to as a prophecy fulfillment of the blood red moons. Um, Another thing to look at is the Shemitah, I think. And again, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this before. And each time this individual who did the Harbinger, Jonathan Kahn, uh, the last Shemitah was 7 years ago. We all know what happened in 2008 with the financial crash. The Shemitah before that was 2001. I don't know if we have to remind anybody what happened in 2001, but that resulted in the stock crash as well. So this next one in 2015, again in September, is called the Super Shemitah, and so that looks like it could be bad. And as you know, we're printing money like it's literally made of paper. So I think uh, if something happens, it might be to the dollar itself, and the dollar is the main currency of the world. It's the petrodollar, is the currency of choice when trading in oil. So if that goes, that's a major world currency. I don't know if you know, I'm sure a lot of you know that we no longer go by the gold standard. Nobody does. We go by the standard of comparing our currency to everyone else's currency. If you look at uh, anywhere what the dollar is doing, you have no idea what it's doing because you have to compare it to something else. You have to compare it to the euro. You have to compare it to the ruble. You have to compare it to the franc. Anything. And it's the same thing with those other currencies. You have no idea what the euro is doing. You have to compare it to something else. So if you don't know this, I mean, look it up. Uh, I forget his name, but it's Schiff. His last name is Schiff. Do a look for currency and Schiff. You'll find it. Okay, so the next thing is Jade Helm. Personally, I was in the military. I don't think a lot's going to happen with Jade Helm. We went off on exercises all the time. But I do think it's interesting that we see Texas, Utah, and Southern California are red, which is known as hostile areas. And I don't know if you know anything about California, but Southern California itself, below the Orange Curtain, is very, very Republican and conservative. And uh, you can see right here, this was the voting of last election. Texas, Utah voted Republican, and all the rest did not. So I think that's rather odd, and it's very poor taste, if you ask me, to call those states hostile territory. Oh, those states just happen to be like the Middle Eastern territory, and that's why they're training that. You can't tell me that Arizona and New Mexico, I drove through this whole area. Arizona and New Mexico are just the same as Texas. Come on. When it comes to desert warfare, you can always train in that as well, and look at them as hostile territory. But they didn't. They looked at Republican areas as hostile territory. And it's not the military that's doing it, it is the administration that's doing it. So the next thing is the Pope, my favorite subject. And he's coming again in September to the U.S. to talk to Congress and the administration for the first time in history. And this guy is a piece of work. We have an obligation, says Pope Francis, to take care of those around us. And to do that, we have to steward our resources. It should be a new world order. Remember that, new world order. He uses this phrase a lot. And it's everybody who knows anything about the Bible knows what that phrase means. And again, notice how he makes himself the good guy here. Pope Francis called Friday for governments, not this Friday, but for governments to redistribute wealth to the poor in a new spirit of generosity to help curb the economy of exclusion that is taking hold today. That's I mean, a whole lot of nice words to basically steal from the rich and give to the poor, or just take money from everybody and then redistribute it. And I don't know about you guys, but I always like it when a religion that is the most the richest religion in the world, decides that they need to take my hard-earned money that I worked for to distribute it among other people. And I heard this once. Of course, this is socialism, but I heard this once when asked if socialism was addressed in the Bible. Chuck Missler said, yes, it is, that socialism is not looked favorably upon in the Bible by the very commandment, thou shalt not steal. The fact that there's a commandment against stealing acknowledges that there is possessions, and you're not supposed to take them from other people. But this Pope doesn't seem to agree with at least that commandment, and we all know how he thinks about other things. And let's look at, and this is what happens with socialism. As we know, Greece, these are pictures, I just did a search for Greece, and as I like to call Greece, you know, domino number one. And another thing to look at, to do your research on, is gay marriage. Of course, that passed, and this isn't about whether or not it's wrong. I think you can guess my feelings on it. But this is more along the lines of what the churches are doing, how they're responding. And it's shocking to me how fast churches, supposedly Christian churches, are just lining up and caving to recognize same-sex marriage as Christian. And this is the Presbyterian Church recognizing gay marriage as Christian, apparently not only redefining marriage but redefining Christian. And I'd like to get into the gay marriage thing, but that's a whole other video about what the definition of marriage is. And we have here the Episcopalians also voting to celebrate gay marriage in the churches. They apparently now they embrace it. And there was a video I want to share with you. Just listen to this.
The church came to its senses over time and labeled both racism and sexism as sinful. And now we find ourselves at this last barrier about human identity. You can call that barrier homophobia. You can call that barrier heterosexism. But we must now have the courage to take the final step and to call homophobia and heterosexism what they are. They are sin. Homophobia is a sin. Heterosexism is a sin. Shaming people for whom they love is a sin. Shaming people because their gender identity does not fit neatly into your sense of what it should be is a sin.
Did you get that? Thinking homosexuality is a sin is now a sin. And I find that amazing that uh, just the opposite of what is once thought is now a sin. And talk about making good evil and evil good. It's really strange how apparently all the apostles are wrong now. James talks specifically about homosexuality and a whole bunch of others sexual sins as a sin, and that brings us back to let me get rid of this. That brings us back to this that it's now a sin to think of gay marriage as a sin. They're just lining up to embrace homosexual marriage, and the government doesn't even have to threaten them now with losing their tax exemption, which, I mean, their tax exempt status, which I'm sure was a concern for them, which is why they're just caving, which to me is amazing. I mean, we see talk about sex. I don't know how many of you know what happened recently with Ashley Madison. This is a site geared for infidelity and cheating on your spouse. It's made for that. And this is what I find most amazing. 38 million anonymous members. And that's just one site. We have, of course, I don't know if you've seen any of these commercials about women. There's about 8 million here. Women looking for sex. Older women looking for sex with younger men. You know, this is why we have, herpes commercials. Herpes commercials right next to Cialis commercials with condom commercials. Of course, that brings up the whole reason why I wanted to do this, because I saw those condoms uh, in the parking lot. So let's quickly move on to one thing that I wanted to. I look a lot on videos for CERN, because I think this is kind of like the dark horse. No one's going to see this one coming because nobody's prepared. Nobody's doing their research on it. And even Stephen Hawking thinks that CERN, this is the atom smasher. And if you haven't seen the movie Angels and Demons, you may want to watch that. That explains what CERN is. Stephen Hawking is afraid of this thing. It's creating black holes. It's creating portals. Now, what I find amazing to this is that this was in an area called forgive me, I'm going to get these names wrong, St. Genus Poli. And that's in the area of where CERN is. Now, this was a little Rome city, which probably took the name by Apollonicon. And it is probable that under the Roman occupation, the church of the village was dedicated to Apollo, right? Now, Apollo appears in the Bible as both a place of destruction and as the name of the angel in the Hebrew Bible. Abaddon is used as reference for the bottomless pit. So that's what CERN is. It might create another abyss, another portal, which is what these scientists say they're doing. And this is outside of CERN, which is amazing to me. I don't know if they're mocking Christianity or if they're just going by prophecy, but this is Shiva, which is the god of destruction. So do your research on all of this. And I hope to put up more videos. And I'm glad if you stuck through to the end. Thank you. I promise to get better. All right. Thank you.